Hey everyone, my name's Tony, and the footage playing in the background is a match that I had against Mr. Taterhead, otherwise known as like No Perks since 2020. He's got like 9,000 hours. It was a really fun match. I was definitely sweating. And then after the match, I went into his live stream, and he was just cracking up. I'm pretty sure he was high as a kite, man, because he was just losing it, having a good old time. But it was a really good match, so I hope you enjoy it. But with that being said, let's jump straight into the actual topic. So, I worked as an unarmed security guard at a hospital for about 1, 2 weeks. Basically the training period. And in that short time, I have some of the wildest stories I've ever had from any job. I go meet the captain, which he's just the head guy over the entire operation. He was allegedly a former Marine. I'm not going to accuse him of stolen valor or anything, but I just have my doubts based on the training that we were given. So we go to his office, and there's probably about, I would say, 6 of us. And we're sitting there, and he's going over how to escort somebody if you're by yourself. And he goes, okay, what you got to do is you got to, grab the wrist with your one hand, and then you grab, you put your other hand on their elbow, and you can like force them to like walk down a hallway. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't sound right. I go, wait a second. I don't think that's going to work. He's like, oh, no. Somebody my size, which he was at the time, I believe he was about, like, he was a little guy. He was about like 5'4", maybe 140 pounds tops. Meanwhile, I'm like 5'10", 320 pounds. And he goes, oh, somebody my size could easily walk you down the hallway. I was like, I'm pretty sure you would just get punched in the face if I was fighting back. And he goes, no, let me show you. So I stand up, because I don't care. And I'm like, all right. So I stick my arm out. That way he can grab my wrist this way that, he's supposed to, and he can get my elbow the way that he wants to. Which, obviously, if I'm actually fighting you, I'm going to be fighting you. You're not just going to grab my wrist and nothing's going to happen. And so he gets my wrist and my elbow the way that he wants to, where essentially he's pulling my arm back with one arm and then using his other hand to like try to keep my arm straight and push me forward while doing that. And he starts doing it, and this is, we've got a lot of room in this place. I take like 2 steps forward, and then I just want you to picture this. So he's got my right arm, he's over like my right shoulder. All I do is take my left foot, move it to the right, so that way I'm like turning around, and at the same time I just bend my arm in, because it's not like he's stopping me from bending my arm. He's also 140 pounds. So I just bend my arm in as I'm stepping around, and now we're standing face to face. Well, not face to face, chest to face, but you get the idea. With my free hand right next to his head, and I go, "Huh? You just got punched in the face." And it's like, what was that? Like, it was so stupid. He goes, oh, well, maybe you should only do this if you got 2 people, that way you can control both arms, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, you dumbass, what the hell are you talking about? It was so funny, though. But this guy thought that he was just, hot shit. Oh, I'm a former Marine, da, 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 da. I'm like, yeah, so was my uncle, but I don't think he would say something so stupid. Or my great uncle. So then we get to restraining people. And they have some restraints that we would be using if we ever had to restrain somebody. And I'm looking at them, and it's like, okay, you have this 2-finger rule, which is essentially you have to be able to slip 2 fingers in under the restraint when it goes around their wrist. Now, again, I was 320 pounds, which means my arms were big. And I go, well, what do you do for somebody like me? Because I said, I'm pretty sure that if you use 2 fingers with, the same rule, I can just slip those cuffs. And they were like these leather cuffs that you've seen. You'll probably see them in like horror movies or horror games, where it's like the leather cuffs in like an asylum. That's basically what they were. And he comes over there and he looks at my arm and he's like, yeah, somebody your size, we would probably have to use the more adjustable cuffs, but those are harder to get on like in a quick situation. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But we had to go through, and everybody had to and these weren't tied down to anything, just for the record, but everybody had to be restrained and restrain somebody else, just so everybody knew what it was like to do it, how to do it, what it felt like, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, he checked everybody. Now, I didn't care. I'm like, yeah, I'll stick my arm out. Anybody can come over do it. Anybody can come over here and, restrain my arm. I genuinely don't care. I had both of my arms out, people doing both of my arms at the same time. This is just foreplay for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care. You want to get my ankles too? Hey, let's make this kinky. So, moving on. So we get through that part of the training, and then a call comes over on the radio. And they have different code words and everything for what's going on. Like a code strong means, hey, every able-bodied person, get over here. We got a fight going on. Then you've got code black, which is active shooter. Code blue, cardiac arrest. And we do actually have to respond to cardiac arrest because the family will sometimes be in the way, and we have to get the family out of the way so that way the doctors can do their job. You know, good news is I never had to actually respond to any of those, and there was no code blacks, thank God. But we had a couple of code strong. So code strong comes over the radio and they go, "Hey, listen, we got somebody in the padded room. We think they're going to be a runner. We could just use some extra hands, make sure they don't like try to take it off from the hospital because the person was nuts, so they were in a padded room." So there's like 6 of us in training, and we all show up. But the other people who just walk around the building also come. So you've got like maybe 10 people or so standing around this door, as well as probably 3 or 4 nurses as well. And these are some pretty big guys that were the nurses too. And you've got families walking by like, "Oh my God, what is going on? This is like, what's going on? What's going on? This is crazy. Something must be happening. Why are all these people here?" Because we're all in uniform. They open the door. They open the door to this padded room, and there is a girl in there who can't be more than like 5'2" at tops, and probably 110, 120 pounds soaking wet. And I'm like, we got almost 15 people standing here for this little girl. And she took one look at all of us standing out there and just said, "Yep, give me the night juice." You know what I mean? Like, so they stuck a needle in her arm, got her to calm down, everything, even though she was already calm at that point, seeing all of us. I mean, whatever she was going through, boy, it snapped her out of it when she saw all of us. Yeah, so then that happens. And then we go back, and Captain ends up turning off his radio at some point because another code strong goes out in the nut house wing. So there was a specific area where you could only get in or out using a code. And I mean, I'm not trying to be rude to anybody, they're going through psychological issues, but it was the nut house is essentially what it was. So we ended up missing that call. And it took 6 people to get this guy restrained and give him, something to calm him down. And the only reason that I know about this now is because as part of my training, they had me in the nut house area with another older guy who had been there a while. So as we're sitting there, and just to kind of give you a visual idea, again, I'm like 5'10", 320 pounds. The guy next to me, and he's an older guy, but he's like 6'6" probably, and a solid 280 pounds. So he's a big SOB too. Well, he's telling me of what happened earlier. Like, yeah, it took 6 of us. He got in my face and everything. Da 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 da. I tried to talk him down, but the guy was just adamant that he was going to leave, and he was getting, kind of physical. So we had to restrain him. And I go, "Well, which one is it?" And it was like room number 6 or whatever. I'm like, okay, no big deal. Like, I'll just keep my eye out just in case he pops his head up. And while I was there, and again, I'm just training, learning about all this stuff. While I was there, he does eventually come out of it. He pops his head out and looks at the 2 of us and just turns around and goes right back to bed. He's like, "I'm not dealing with these 2. I've already lost this fight once. I'm not doing it again." So then, and keep in mind, these stories are over the course of, the 1 to 2 weeks that I was working there. These all didn't happen in the same day. Like, I would have spent an entire day in the nut house area, roughly. I would have spent like 1 or 2 days in the training area. I would have spent like, 1 day watching this person, 1 day watching this person, or maybe 1 day where really nothing happened. These all didn't happen just in the same day, just over the course of 1 to 2 weeks. So with that being said, let's go on to the next one. I had to get training in the ER department, which was basically more of learning the layout and learning the different code words. Well, I learned something new. Turns out, sometimes the police, when they pick up a drunk, instead of taking them to jail, they bring them to the hospital. And they go into the ER. Learn that one the hard way because we get told, like, "Hey, you got to watch this guy now. He's drunk. He's got to sleep it off." And he's not listening, obviously, because he's drunk. So they're trying to keep him in his room, and he doesn't want to be in his room. He wants to walk around and roam about the hospital. Well, we can't have that. Now, the guy that I was with, I actually went to high school with. I think he was a senior, and I was a freshman at the time. But this guy had a, what do I call it? I'm better than you attitude. I'm mightier than thou, holier than thou, whatever you want to call it. So that didn't go over too well with a belligerent drunk. So we're standing there, and he's like talking down to this guy. You need to sit in this room. Da 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 da. You need to sit down. You can't be roaming around. Blah blah blah. And I'm looking because this guy's obviously getting pissed. I'm like, oh my god, you're gonna get knocked the fuck out, and then I'm gonna have to fight this guy by myself. I don't want to do that. So I'm like, hey man, why don't I give it a shot? You know. So I walk into the room. I'm like, hey man, listen, you're at a hospital, you're drunk. We just need you to stay in your room because we can't have you going around and you know potentially bumping into the nurses. Everybody deserves their privacy. You wouldn't want somebody just walking in on you when you're in the ER, so we can't have you just walking around and going into other people's rooms. You mind just like sitting in a chair and just sit there like until you sober up, and then as soon as you're sober up and they check you out, make sure you're good, you can get out of here. You'll be on your way. That guy looks at me and goes, "Oh, that's all I gotta do? All right, man." And he pulls up a chair and sits down. And the whole time I'm thinking, because the guy's behind me, the guy that I went to high school with is behind me. I'm like, do you see how easy that was when you just talk to somebody like a normal human being? Even drunk, he still knew, you know? So yeah, and now I got two more where I had to sit and watch somebody who was restrained already. But we had to make sure that they didn't get out of their restraints. So the first one, this guy, they don't know what the hell he was on. This guy could not tell you his name. He could not tell you where he was. He probably couldn't even tell you that he was on planet Earth still. This guy was so far gone, and they had him completely restrained and everything. But I don't even know how to describe it. He was just constantly pulling at his restraints and just mumbling stuff that didn't make any sense whatsoever. The dude was just blitzed out of his mind, and I have to sit there. Now, what they didn't tell me was the fact that, and I understand when you're in a nightgown, you typically don't have anything underneath that. But I wasn't prepared to see another man's dick multiple times on my 8-hour shift. I didn't volunteer for that. Because I got to sit there and make sure he doesn't come out of his restraint. So every time he moves around, I got to look up at him to make sure he's not getting up, about to, knock the hell out of me. And there's his penis. Every time, man. It's like, God, can somebody get this man a blanket laid across him? Give him some drawers or something. Like, please. I'm dying over here. But yeah, I had to spend the whole day just watching that guy. And then, I think it was actually the next day, or there may have been a day gap between these two. I have to go and I have to watch this other guy. And he's in there because he has done so much meth and has had multiple strokes to the point that he can barely speak anymore. And they have him restrained because he's belligerent. And then I'm told you have to make sure that nobody brings their purse or jackets or anything into the room. Also, you need to be on the lookout for these two people. Now, you're probably thinking, like, who am I on the lookout for? Well, one was his girlfriend, who has been banned from the hospital. And the other was his mother, who's been banned from the hospital. Now, why were they banned from the hospital? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked, random person. They were banned from the hospital for suspecting of sneaking drugs into him, or into his room for him. They were pretty sure that his mom was putting something in like hamburgers, like she would, show up with like McDonald's hamburgers, and that there was just something mixed in with them because he was getting drugs in the hospital. They knew it because he was having issues in the hospital. So they ended up just banning both of them. So there I am, having to watch over this guy, and his grandparents show up. So you're talking like 70, 80-year-old people. And I go, hey, listen, you can't take your purse in there. You can't take your jacket in there. You're going to have to leave it out here with me. And, it's like I said, it's an old person. This woman, his grandmother, goes, listen, it's cold in there. I've got to have my jacket. I'm like, I'm sorry, but, I've been told I can't lose my job over this. I've been told I'm not allowed to let y'all take in jackets or anything because we've had some incidents. Now, she was very nice about it, and she's like, I'll take my jacket off, maybe we'll just, and she turns to, I imagine her husband, she turns to him and is like, well, we'll just stay, only a little bit of time because I get cold easily. And I'm like, fuck, man, what? Like, I just felt bad because, my grandmother, she gets cold. She wears a jacket everywhere. It's like, oh, man. I said, I tell you what. I said, "Do you mind taking the jacket off? Let me get some gloves real quick. Do you have anything in the pockets?" And she goes, "No, just some tissue." I was like, "All right, I will search your pockets if you're okay with that, and then you can take the jacket in there." And she was okay with that then, so I slapped some gloves on real quick because we always had gloves, or there was always gloves nearby. Check her pockets, good to go. Hand her coat back, and then they visited. But yeah, man, that's just wild. Like the mom and the girlfriend are just sneaking drugs into the hospital, into his room, and he's already had multiple strokes. Like the guy was half brain dead, in my opinion. I mean, he could. It was almost like he knew what he wanted and wanted to say. Think of like Ozzy Osbourne, right? Nobody really understood what he was saying, but he knew what he was trying to say. That's basically what kind of state this guy was in. And I just felt so bad for him, man. It was crazy. But yeah, that was all the stories for my 1 to 2 weeks working at a security job. Um what ended up happening was, because I didn't mind first shift, I actually kind of enjoyed the job. It was pretty interesting. There was always something going on. So I didn't mind working it, but they were going to stick me back on third shift, which meant that I was always going to be just like sitting somewhere for 8 hours, and I can't do that. Like I'm just not built for that. I've got to have some sort of stimulation. So I ended up going back to the company that had hired me, and I was like, "Hey, I don't want to go to third shift. Is there anything else?" And they go, "Yeah, you could work unarmed security at this hotel or this motel." I'm very familiar. As a matter of fact, anybody in my city is quite familiar with this motel. There is no way in hell I am working at this cracked in motel unarmed, and I'm supposed to go door to door like, "Hey, keep it down." Yeah, I'd like to live. I kind of like my life. I didn't want to die, so I was not doing that. And they were like, "Well, if you don't want to work there or there, then that's it. We just don't need you. You're fired." I was like, "Oh well, got fired." But yeah, so that was my crazy stories for just working security for that short time. It was very interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a damn good day, everyone.